Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. We're going to start with this news from MSOElevator. So thank you for sharing this as breaking. The House and Senate agree on a timeline for the America Competes and USICA bill conference completion. And of course, we are waiting for this as the Safe Banking Act has a chance of making it in this final version of the bill. It might also not make it in, as Schumer has pulled it out in the past, but this is what we are looking out for, and we at least have a bit more of an affirmative timeline, as apparently according to this, committee chairs plan to review items from June 6th to 10th, then hold meetings from June 13th to the 16th, and have the finished conference report by June 21st. And so obviously this gives us a bit of a timeline, a shorter timeline as opposed to July 4th. And so this is less than a month away when they could complete this and when we can know if SAFE does make it through the final version. And so you can pause to read this snippet if you'd like, just from the source of where this information came from, and just to show you that MSOElevator, I think he got this from, at least just to show you, Senate.gov website. So the source is here if you want to grab the link below. And it seems like they have a calendar here for the next 4 weeks as they're planning this out. But just wanted to share this with you because we could likely know whether SAFE makes it in the final version of the America Competes in less than a month's time. And while this does come from Senate.gov, it is possible that it can change from now until then. So plan accordingly for your own situation. And all I can share is that I'll continue to stack money in hopes that by June 21st, I'll be able to send 4,000 or 5,000 more into my TFSA in order to average down on my positions. And so wanted to share some good news though out of New Jersey as they held their meeting yesterday on May 24th. And the great news is, despite only approving 13 adult use dispensaries last month, we see sales continue to grow, showing us that the demand for legal cannabis or adult use cannabis is very strong in New Jersey. This most recent week, it wasn't the record set, as that was from April 24th to the 30th. We saw 5.5 million in sales off of 46,000 transactions. However, this past week, from May 15th to May 21st, saw 5.3 million sales off of a record 51,900 transactions, making for the total first month of recreational sales in New Jersey, April 21st to May 21st, 24.2 million in sales off of 212,433 transactions from just 13 dispensaries. So think of the potential. So no doubt the New Jersey CRC is happy with the progress being made, but obviously more stores equals more sales and more transactions. So the sooner that the CRC can get their training wheels off and allow more approval for dispensaries and more cultivation to allow more growth to supply those dispensaries, obviously we will see more growth out of recreational sales. And so with that, wanted to share from Todd Harrison, as there were more New Jersey winners yesterday, including but not limited to, and I imagine the progress from the CRC made them more confident that they wanted to approve Columbia Care's second cultivation site, Air Wellness' second cultivation site, Terra Ascend for a third dispensary in Lodi, Ascend Wellness for a third dispensary in Montclair, and then Air Wellness dispensaries. From my understanding, they approved 3 dispensaries for Air Wellness. And so obviously, while Air Wellness did not get a dispensary the first time around, they're happy to get 3 approved just like that. And so this is obviously a good sign for everyone else in New Jersey. Well, Curaleaf also got permission to expand New Jersey adult use sales to Edgewater Park Dispensary, giving Curaleaf their second location to sell adult use cannabis in the Garden State. I just want to take this time to make a little correction, as apparently the Edgewater Park is now the 13th dispensary licensed to sell adult use cannabis in the Garden State. And so from my understanding, there were 13 dispensaries approved in the beginning, but there might have been 12, as Air Wellness was going to be the 13th, but they didn't get the approval. And so for that reason, it seems like Curaleaf might be the 13th. And then if we go back, we see 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So as of right now, it's going forward, it seems like New Jersey might have 18 dispensaries approved once these launch and come online. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm just trying to give you an accurate reading of where we're at today based on the data that we've gotten. But of course, over time, I'll be able to correct that. But so as of right now, it seems like we're going to have 13, 14, 15, 16, 5 more dispensaries added on to the 13 that currently exist in New Jersey. And so obviously, over time, more dispensaries will be approved on, which will lead to more sales and more growth out of the state. Well, I wanted to share this one from Verano's Q1 2022 earnings. Now, I have not had time to go through this, and I'll likely go through a little bit on my Sunday video, but just wanted to share this. If you were curious, you can grab the link below and look through that. But the good news is that Verano's revenue of $202 million did beat their estimates of $201.5 million just by a little bit, while their adjusted EBITDA estimates were $73.68 million, and they did manage to beat that with adjusted EBITDA of $80.1 million. And so you can check this out if you wanted to see a little bit more of Verano's Q1 earnings, but I will cover that a little bit on my Sunday video as I just haven't had the time to go through that. While MJ Stock Trader shares this one, which should give a boost of confidence to Verano shareholders during these trying times, as we did see them delay releasing their Q4 earnings, but that was because they were changing from IFRS accounting to generally accepted accounting principles, and just due to the negative sentiment that this industry has seen over the last 15 months, which has not been deserving whatsoever, as these companies are crushing it in legal states, but that is just the reality until we get through to the other side. And so happy to share Verano prevails in Nielsen arbitration case, dismissing all claims. And while I'm not going to go through this, I do recommend grabbing the link below if you're a Verano shareholder, if you wanted to read more. But the good news is that the arbitrator dismissed all of Nielsen's claims with prejudice and awarded Verano nearly $100,000 in attorney's fees in the arbitration, further underscoring the groundless nature of the lawsuit. So good job, Verano, for surviving this attack. Well, I wanted to share this one from Jungle Java as a quick update tonight for the Advisor Shares MSOs ETF, as there were no changes made to the holdings for May 24th, 2022 as of yesterday. And so I would just say this is good based on the overall sentiment of all the markets overall being very red and very negative. To see that MSOS has maintained their cash position overnight of 2.3 million from 2.3 million gives confidence to MSO investors. And so obviously over this time, if you can, plan accordingly for your own situation, but I will continue to stack cash in hopes that I can send that into my TFSA and accumulate at these prices, hopefully, by mid-June. That is what I'm aiming for. So on to some snippets from investment firms. Todd Harrison, thank you for sharing this one from Beacon on safe banking. And so SAFE's odds of inclusion in Final Competes Act look promising. And while we did say the same thing for the NDAA, and that's why you have to plan accordingly for your own situation, we are hopeful that, as time goes on and the problem exacerbates, that we might actually see it get through this time. And so you can pause to read the whole thing, but just wanted to share this main snippet at the bottom. He predicted that the conference could finalize its report before the August recess, if not sooner. And this is in reference to Rep. Earl Blumenauer, who is actively part of the conference process right now. And I featured him in my last week's video saying that he is optimistic that SAFE will make it through into this final version of the bill. Because obviously, if you don't solve a problem in December, the problem only gets worse over time, making it more dire and requiring you to solve it, hopefully by June or July. And so this obviously is why some of us are hopeful. And so while he predicts that the conference could finalize its report before the August recess, it's nice that we get this as more of a definitive timeline, and it's much sooner than August as well. And so just wanted to jump over this one from Beacon on US Cannabis. So thanks, Todd, for sharing this one, as it looks at the compounded annual growth rate for certain industries. And Todd does share here that there's growth at value hiding in plain sight. Please pay attention. And so if we look through this, this looks at enterprise value divided by sales with 2022 estimates, enterprise value divided by sales looking at 2023 estimates. And then we've got enterprise value divided by EBITDA with 2022 estimates and enterprise value divided by EBITDA with 2023 estimates. And then lastly, we've got 2021 to 2023 EBITDA compounded annual growth rate. And I do apologize, the visual of this it's not super clear. And so if you can't see this very well, please grab the link below as that will help. But if we go through, we see alcohol, tobacco, CPG, then alcohol, tobacco, and CPG combined, then CSE listed US operators, then US listed non-plant touching, and then Canadian LPs. And if we just look at the compounded annual growth rate from 2021 to 2023, we see alcohol is expected to grow at 7%, tobacco at 2%, CPG at 4%, alcohol, tobacco, and CPG total at 5%, CSE listed US operators at 55%, US listed non-plant touching companies at -4%, and then Canadian LPs at 46%. So well, there's also a chart down here. You might not be able to see it well, so you might want to grab the link, but it highlights valuation versus EBITDA growth expectations. And so while we have CPG, alcohol, tobacco, and US non-plant touching companies all the way down here, if we go all the way out to the right, we can see Canadian LPs expected compounded annual growth rate of 46%, while their current valuations are trading at an EBITDA multiple of 22.6x. But if we look at CSE listed US operators, they're expected at a compounded annual growth rate of 55%, but they're currently trading at EBITDA multiples of 7.9x. And if we look at 7.9x and then 22x, where Canadian LPs are, that means US operators can basically grow from here and get to where Canadian LPs currently are, and their valuations would go up times 3, because 7, 14, 21, just based on their EBITDA multiples, if we're looking at that. So just wanted to share that. Hopefully that was clear enough. Otherwise, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll try to clarify. But nonetheless, that does show what Todd is saying here, is that there is growth at value hiding in plain sight. So make sure you pay attention and accumulate while you can. Well, I wanted to share this one from Tom Engel, as a new Justice Department report shows that federal cannabis arrests are continuing to drop as more state cannabis legalization laws are enacted. Which should be obvious and not surprising at this point, but nonetheless, it does add to the benefits of ending cannabis prohibition, as more states that reform their laws see less people arrested, see less families ruined, and less communities ruined by putting individuals in jail for having a plant in their pocket versus, allowing that individual to live their life, be part of their family, and help their community flourish. And so with that, wanted to share this one from Weed Street 420, because this is obviously just infuriating, but in February, Chuck Schumer said this about cannabis legislation: as a majority leader, I can set priorities. This is a priority for me, but today we learned that crack and cocaine are bigger priorities than cannabis. You cannot make this shit up as Schumer continues to lie through his teeth to his voters in order to keep his power and keep working for Big Pharma, which is infuriating, but we can see that the Equal Act will end the discriminatory 18-to-1 sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine. That's why it's supported by a huge bipartisan coalition. I stood today with New Yorkers impacted by the war on drugs to say we're going to keep working until we get it done. And I'm not saying that this shouldn't be changed as well because I don't know enough about this to comment on it, but it's obviously a massive slap in the face to everybody in the cannabis industry who voted for Schumer thinking that this man would keep his word. But I do have to ask, do you think it's possible that he's doing that because he knows that he cannot get more social equity or social justice provisions added to the Safe Banking Act, and it's possible he's doing a few different acts like this in order to look like he's fighting to give back social justice-wise, and this might allow him to keep safe in the final version of the America Competes Act? I'm just speculating, but let me know in the comments if you think that might be the case. But also just wanted to share this because cannabis violations have taken over 10,000 truck drivers off the road this year, adding more supply chain disruptions. And if you just deschedule cannabis, that makes cannabis legal and not illegal, all these 10,000 truck drivers can likely continue with their job. And obviously, there's more to this. It's more complicated than this. But just to say that if Chuck Schumer were to have kept his promise and descheduled cannabis, this would not be an issue. So while I did not plan to go through this all, and I just wanted to add this in because it's more of just the less you do, the more problems continue to exacerbate. And sadly, all these problems affect are the American people. So here's a prime example of the Dem stupidity shooting America in the foot, as apparently truck drivers are being tested more and the consequences for drug-related violations have increased. And so fair enough, more testing might sound like a good thing, but testing for cannabis when you campaigned on decriminalizing it, because apparently in January 2020, since the Dems took over office, the Department of Transportation's Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration also upped the random drug testing rate from 25% of the average number of driver positions to 50%. And truck drivers are mainly screened for drug use via urinalysis, and cannabis stays in your system longer than anything else, but there are now new saliva tests being proposed as well. So you can do as much cocaine as you want, as much meth, drink as much booze as you want, but if you find cannabis in your system, boom, you're off the road, and all everyday Americans, suffer the brunt of that. And so obviously just ridiculous, infuriating. Just wanted to share that as another example of, democratic idealism. And I used to be a shit lib Democrat, but I do not think I could ever vote for Democrats or liberals again after just seeing, last 2 years, at least under the Trudeau government in Canada and under the Democrats under Biden in the US. But on to some more good news, as this one comes from Aaron Idleheit, is the big alcohol companies will go where the growth is, and the growth is coming from cannabis consumption. As he shares this one from Jeremy Burke, who writes for Business Insider Trading, the maker of Samuel Adams, the beer that bears the likeness of the US founding father, is launching what it says will be a drink of the future, tea with cannabis psychoactive ingredient THC. And so good to see Samuel Adams stepping into the cannabis game. And why would they? Well, this highlight comes from, I believe this is New Frontier data. But thanks, Todd, for sharing this. As U.S. cannabis, consumers preferred cannabis over alcohol by age. And as we can see over time, people that are older die sooner than people that are younger. And so obviously that goes without saying, but that means is that in the future, we will likely see if more younger consumers prefer cannabis over alcohol, we're likely going to see a lot more cannabis sold than alcohol as time goes on. As a majority of those aged 18 to 44 much prefer using cannabis than buying alcohol and dealing with the consequences of hangovers, stupid drunk shenanigans, and all the rest that comes with that. And so lastly, on to some state news. Todd Harrison shares with us, in a historic move, Rhode Island lawmakers vote to legalize recreational cannabis. And so I think it was as of yesterday that the bill went to the governor's desk to be signed, but Rhode Island is set to become the 19th state to legalize adult use cannabis. And so while we do see disruptions and we do see the lack of positive sentiment in the cannabis industry, does not stop states from, leading the charge, continuing to legalize, and leading the state-led growth story in America. And so good news, though, as well, out of Illinois, this one from Grown In, as 185 Illinois adult use dispensary licenses might finally officially be awarded this Friday. And I just can't stand how headlines in the news start using might and finally, as in well, just tell us when it's going to happen. But thanks for the heads up anyways, as the stay on 185 Illinois cannabis licenses, keeping license winners from opening stores, could be lifted as early as this Friday, according to a motion and discussion in Cook County Circuit Court this morning. So that's a big deal, and that would be 2 days from now. So I hope to update you if this does happen, but this would obviously be a big boost in Illinois, as longtime cannabis industry plaintiff WAH Group filed a motion this morning that would lift a July 2021 stay on awarding 185 adult use dispensary licenses to those that won them in Illinois so that they could start their businesses. And a majority of these are small businesses and minority entrepreneurs that deserve to finally launch their business. Lifting the stay would allow the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation to transfer those 185 licenses to the lottery winners, who could begin using them free and clear of any legal restrictions. The action would more than double Illinois' current 110 existing dispensary licenses, most of which are owned by multi-state operators. And that if we go from 110 to, 285, 385, that's going to increase sales obviously for sales for adult use in Illinois. And so we'd love to see that. While other good news out of Delaware, because unfortunately the Delaware Democratic Governor John Carney just vetoed a bill to legalize cannabis possession. However, thankfully, lawmakers have the votes to override that. And so this just shows the true colors. The Delaware Democratic governor basically acting on his emotions based on what's actually true and what data could tell him. And fortunately, the lawmakers in the state are able to override that. And so it looks like we will see cannabis decriminalized in Delaware, which is a positive step in the right direction. Obviously, it would be better if they would legalize for adult use and launch a program, because that provides jobs, tax revenue, and all the other benefits. Hopefully, they'll get there. But nonetheless, just showing that, America working in its finest as lawmakers overriding a stubborn, governor that sadly should not be in power anymore. And so other good news is apparently North Carolina bill would legalize cannabis use possession, but we've seen this before. And I'm just highlighting this because in this article highlights how few states are left to actually reform their laws still. And so just showing a comprehensive cannabis legalization and regulation bill was introduced in the North Carolina Senate on Monday that would allow for individuals aged 21 and older to legally possess a small amount of the drug. Senate Bill 765 was submitted by Senator Toby Fitch, Democrat Wilson. Now, is this just a ploy to get votes in November? It quite possibly could be. But just to add that so far, or as of right now, it seems like North Carolina is one of the 6 states where all uses of cannabis are illegal, along with Idaho, Kansas, Nebraska, South Carolina, and Wyoming. And that includes prohibiting the use of medical. But so think of how few states are left to reform their laws. All the other ones have done it already. They're way ahead of them. And so these states are going to be ones probably struggling the most in terms of, looking for tax revenue, looking for new jobs to bring in. And obviously, the solution is right in front of their eyes, so hopefully they can actually move forward and get this one done. We'd see some progress out of North Carolina. Well, unfortunately, though, we're hoping for some progress out of Kansas, but apparently Kansas will not legalize medical cannabis this year. But the chairman in the Senate, Federal, and State Affairs Committee said lawmakers will work over the summer to form a near-complete product of a bill that can be considered for early 2023. And so, it just gets delayed a little bit further, kicking the can down the road as we've seen in many states over the years. But nonetheless, that would make Kansas legalize for medical, and that would be only 5 states remaining that have yet to reform their laws. And so hopefully we see more states take initiative and do the right thing for their, for their constituents. But onto this study, which highlights some more good news that we'd love to relay, is the effectiveness and safety of medical cannabis for treating cancer-related symptoms in oncology patients. So happy to relay that medical treatment was initiated by 324 patients, and 212, 158, and 126 reported at follow-ups. Most outcome measures improved significantly during medical cannabis treatment for most patients. That's a pretty big deal. Specifically, at 6 months, total cancer symptoms burden declined from baseline by a median of 18%, from 122 at baseline to 89 at endpoint. And reported adverse effects were common, but mostly non-serious and remained stable during medical cannabis treatment, which is better than possibly, being addicted to other painkillers. And so obviously, not all medicines will be perfect. There will be side effects, but I think that the fact that those seem less harmful than some other addictive substances is worth considering. Well, the result of this study suggests that medical cannabis treatment is generally safe for oncology patients and can potentially reduce the burden of associated symptoms with no serious medical cannabis-related adverse effects. So happy to report more data telling us that we already know that cannabis is a medicine and why we ought to deschedule it. And so this one comes from May 20th of 2022, so fairly recent. Well, onto this one, just wanted to share from Mindset Value from Aaron Idlehite, who was featured earlier in this one, but just highlighting the bright green absurdity of a preview of what a NASDAQ listing could do for cannabis stocks. And so I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but just going to summarize this because this is what we did see. And I reported on Bright Green, which is a company partnered with the DEA, I believe, to at least just grow cannabis for them. I don't remember the details as it was a few weeks ago, but on Wednesday, Bright Green, a plant-touching company that was allowed to uplist on the NASDAQ for some reason, why the MSO still can't, I don't know, but it was briefly the most valuable cannabis company in America after its IPO on Tuesday. It was briefly the most valuable cannabis company in the US, and I don't think it's made a penny. And so just to highlight, the stock rose from its direct reference price of $8 to a stock price of over $50 per share, giving the company a stupefying valuation of over $8 billion. Even after plunging today, the company still sports a $2.5 billion valuation, which is more than Cresco Labs, more than Verano, I believe. And so this valuation is, of course, absurd because Bright Green has no revenue. But what Bright Green does possess might be more valuable than all the revenue and cash flow of any leading U.S. cannabis company, a NASDAQ uplisting. And so I do believe that U.S. MSOs will get there, but just to provide some context that, again, in 2018, when we saw Canopy and Aurora Cannabis hit all-time highs, they were making like $10 million a quarter, and those companies were valued at $25 billion. 20 billion Aurora, 25 billion Canopy at its height. And so for that reason, I do believe that we can see US MSOs, when they eventually uplist, get up, to 50 billion possibly. easily above 25 billion based on what Canopy and Aurora were making in revenue compared to what the MSOs are actually doing in revenue right now, making hundreds of million a quarter. So just wanted to add that for context because we don't know what's going to happen when they uplist, but I see them at least exceeding 25 billion in market cap valuation, going up to maybe 50 billion. They could surpass that, but obviously from low 1 to 5 billion where they're at now to 50 billion is still a massive jump, right? And so, but what Bright Green does possess, we went through that. Bright Green obtained a DEA contract to produce medical cannabis, which allows it to legally sell cannabis to research institutions, thus making it federally legal and allowing it to trade on the NASDAQ. But still, it has not made any revenue whatsoever. But based on the fact that it was just on the NASDAQ, it went from $8 a share up to $50 a share, which equated to an $8 billion valuation. So just use that as as an example of how you can compare what could happen to the US MSOs once they're finally able to uplist. So just a little bit of a preview and foreshadowing of what's to come. Well, lastly, wanted to share this one from Leafly, or not lastly, second lastly, from Leafly, Election 2022 Cannabis Legalization Voting Guide. So if you wanted to keep track, I am going to favorite this now just so that I don't forget about it, but it does highlight all of the states that plan or have some ongoing 2022 cannabis legalization campaigns. We got Arkansas, Maryland, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oklahoma, and South Dakota. And so from all of them, apparently it's only Maryland right now that is on the ballot, but many states do have from now until November to continue to get the signatures in order to get the question put on the ballot. So it's a great resource that simplifies all the 2022 cannabis legalization information and puts it all in one place for you to keep track. And with that, there is also more information on the individual efforts in individual states if you're interested and wanted to read more about that. So I'm not going to go through them all, but you can grab the link as they do have a write-up listed about all the companies in this little chart here. And so lastly, from the chart, guys, wanted to share this video from My Cannabis Stocks Game Plan Daily Market video from Dan the Man, as he questions, is this the MJ bottom? And while I only started really paying attention to this industry in 2019, part of me wishes that I took it more seriously in 2017 and 2018. It might have helped me catch on to the cyclical nature of this industry sooner than I did, which would have helped me make more money in the past and possibly keep more money from then until now. But you live and you learn. And the good news is that Dan has a lot more experience than I do, and he's been trading, I think, since the penny stocks were introduced on Canadian exchanges since 2013 and 2014. And with that, he provides a technical perspective and a wealth of knowledge compared to my fundamental analysis and what I try and feature about these investment firms based on what I learned about Warren Buffett. But I do want to mention that going forward, I think it's best to optimize understanding fundamentals and then also understanding technical analysis, because technical will give you a good idea of when to hold cash and when to enter positions, because it'll give you a better idea of actually knowing when a bottom is versus thinking it might be a bottom and realizing that, the bottom might be out. Even if you're investing in very solid companies that will turn around, because I do believe in the short term, the market is a voting machine, but in the long term, it is a weighing machine. And while fundamentals do not matter now, they will matter in time, and it is just best to be able to combine fundamentals and technical analysis. So I do recommend checking this out. Is it the bottom? We don't know, but all we can do is plan accordingly for your own situation and prepare as best as you possibly can. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.